Hi, I'm Billy Keels, the host of the Going Long podcast. Every week, I'm going to be here interviewing the absolute best in the business as it relates to real asset investing, as well as real Main Street investors. We're going to be having conversations where you can listen in, and that's going to help you to continue on your path to education so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident in investing long distance. So make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you're liking it as well, because that way you can get every single episode as soon as it comes out. And by the way, don't forget to leave today's episode a 5-star review. Let's go ahead and listen to today's conversation. Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help educate you so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. I'm your host, Billy Keels. And you know what? If you've ever wanted to know the secrets to having more than 400 doors in your portfolio in less than 10 years while working a full-time job, then guess what? You're going to want to listen to every single word of today's conversation, because today's guest was not only has his master's in engineering from a really cool university, he also is a Contech and FinTech evangelist, and he is the chapter lead of the multifamily masters in a specific city, and he'll tell you where that is. I don't want to kind of give that away already. And he's also a member of the National Black MBA Association and the managing partner at Make It Rain Capital. I'd like to welcome to today's show, Luc D'Abreau. Luc, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on, BK. It's something I'm looking forward to. We had some good chats in the green room. So yeah, looking forward to diving into some stuff.
Yeah, definitely, man. This is going to be funny. And I appreciate you helping me with the pronunciation of your name so that I didn't completely get that wrong. But look, we practiced, almost made perfect. So, right. So listen, man, as you know, Luc, I love to ask everybody the same couple questions as we get started. And the biggest thing is I'm over here in Europe, and I would love for you to help us understand, where exactly do you live in the U.S.?
So I live in Texas. If anyone's heard of that state, it used to be the largest state, but then I think in the mid 50s, Alaska took that over. And I live here in Austin, in the capital. Moved here a couple months ago. I was a lifelong Californian, lived in Southern California nearly my entire life, but ended up moving out here to make dreams a reality. So now here in Austin, Texas, Billy.
Awesome, man. So you left California to make dreams reality in Texas. Like a lot of times people do it the opposite way. So awesome, man. I love that. Now you're going to tell us more about those dreams. Don't worry. He's going to tell us. So that's cool. So you're in Austin, and help us understand, what is the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours?
I hadn't been in a sauna in a really long time. And my wife, she ended up finding a sauna that was close by at a gym that was close by that was available. So that was awesome. It was very tiring, but that was the goal, to get out of it. And so it was great to be in there, ended up catching up with her, so to speak, because we have so many different things going on throughout the day. So it was kind of like a time to kind of slow down, but then also get a health benefit from it as well. So it was definitely good quality time in the last 24 hours. We did that yesterday evening. Okay,
awesome, man. So you got some quality time with your wife. You're able to get to the spa and get some just great quality conversation and decompress, which is awesome, man. So those little moments are the ones that can make the biggest impact on our lives. So thank you very much for sharing that, Luc. Appreciate it. And listen, man, I gave like a really high level overview of kind of some of the things that you've done, but there's a lot more to your story to tell. And so I would love for you to share with me and the rest of the Going Long family. Tell us a little bit more about your backstory. If you want to highlight some of the probably most important decisions that you made and as you've gotten to this point in your journey, and then we'll talk about kind of where you're going to go from here, but we'll get to that later. Tell us about your backstory, please.
Yeah, so I would end up starting, once I finished graduate school in 2012, I ended up reading the Little Purple Book that everybody knows about, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And a lot of the concepts that were in that book resonated with me a lot. I think I had been exposed to real estate and businesses at a younger age, mostly through my dad. He ended up immigrating to the United States from Trinidad when he was about 20. And so he was very entrepreneurial, right? Immigrant mindset, come here to work hard. And so a lot of those concepts ended up really resonating with me from not only childhood, but then once reading the book. And so a couple of years later, I had the opportunity to invest passively in a couple of deals here in Texas. One was 192 doors, the other one was 253. And so even though I had a small equity portion in those, I understood like the scale that and the power that that was available with investing in those assets. And then last year, my wife and I, we ended up deciding to start a podcast. COVID had hit, and we were having a lot of the same conversations with our friends and family around real estate because they knew that we had invested. And with that, we ended up deciding to start Make It Rain, and that, everything has just kind of exponentially blown up from there, so to speak. And we've made a lot of progress just with our network, just with our understanding, with our goals, what we're trying to do. And really we're focused on increasing access and education for millennials around multifamily real estate investing. We didn't see anybody that was speaking specifically to them, and we were having a lot of those conversations with our friends and family, like I mentioned. So we created this platform to be able to share our story, to share others' stories as well, and really be able to, like I said, increase access and education for millennials. And that's what brings us out here to Texas. Ended up moving here a couple months ago. We want to make sure that we move from the passive side over to the active side. We noticed that a lot of people, they were able to make progress, but the ones who made the quickest progress with being active, for the most part, they did have a strong local presence. Either that was a partner or they were there literally themselves, boots on the ground. And so with that, we ended up coming here, and now we're here at building relationships and continuing to make progress. So that's kind of like a high level, movement through my story.
So I love the fact that you've kind of taken us through this story at 30,000 feet. We're going to dive into a couple of points because there's some things that are really interesting. And I think especially for those of us here on the Going Long podcast, which we really are interested in helping to understand like how you can live in one place, invest in another, which is basically kind of how you got started, right? And you even took it another level. You said passively. So you'll tell us a little bit more about that. But in essence, you were living in California and investing in opportunities that were actually in Texas. And now you went to Texas because you're a part of on your journey, which is awesome. And so one of the things that you mentioned, so you talked about scale, right? And in the power of real estate, but you also mentioned that when you read that little purple book, that purple yellow book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, that you noticed a couple of concepts that really resonated with you. And so I would love for you to maybe dive into that point a little bit. Like, what were the concepts that resonated with you just from that book? And then you started seeing later on that were scale and power. But what specifically from that book helped you to think, I really think I want to learn more about this?
Yeah, I think a big part of it was entrepreneurial, I guess, being entrepreneurial, period. I saw that from a young age. My dad, I was 5 and he had his own radio show, and then he had his own consulting practice that he did. He was also in the military as well. He always had his hands in something and was always doing something. And so I think that ended up rubbing off on me. Like, I was selling stuff on eBay when I was in high school. And so I was, I was tutoring kids also. And there was always something there about being able to do my own thing, quote unquote, right? So that was one thing that resonated with me a lot from Robert Kiyosaki's book, Billy. And then, the other piece too was around ownership and having equity, right? Because that's a way to end up building wealth. Either you can have cash flow, or if something's not cash flowing, then you have that equity, it should appreciate. And that way you can end up being able to get a big payday. One of those two things, right? But upward mobility, a big part of it, you can do it through income. It's just that, being able to do it through some real equity is the way that ends up making a difference. And it's the way that ends up lasting, because you can't pass your income necessarily on to your children or your grandchildren, but you can pass along your equity that you have in some form of investment or some asset. So it was really those two things that resonated with me a lot.
Okay, so perfect. So you've seen the freedom portion, right? Being able to have that freedom, as well as being able to see that equity, and also, as you pass those, those specific assets on, you can actually get both, right? Because you can maintain that income stream, as well as the potential for the equity on the backside as well. So at disposition, meaning that either you're refinancing or you're actually selling it to someone else. So, another thing that is great about your story, Luke, is like you're doing this, you're making moves in life at the same time that you're working a full-time job, right? And so maybe tell us a little bit about how, because I'm in that same boat, by the way. And so this is something that's great. And I think sometimes people think that it's impossible, especially if you're in a demanding job. And maybe tell us a little bit about kind of the role that you do and how are you able to find the right balance?
That's a good question. I think a big part of it is being focused and being very committed to what my short-term and long-term goals are. So that's one thing. Being around positive people, having a strong network, that helps too. I do this with my wife Daisy, so we're constantly talking about what we're working on. So that also helps. And the other piece that I would say is staying organized. So I stay in my lane. Like I focus on these certain things with Make It Rain. It's underwriting. I do our digital marketing, and those are like those main two pieces. Daisy has a lot of investor relations. She has a lot of broker relations pieces that she looks at, and so we kind of stay in our lane, and then also prioritize from there what's going to help us move the ball forward. I'd be lying if I'd said it wasn't difficult. But I think the things that are difficult are worth having. I mean, I think that's the way that life goes, right? If it's easy to get, it's probably easy to let go as well. And so if you end up literally earning something, and putting the time and energy in, then I think you end up valuing it a lot more. And you're able to, hold on to it instead of letting it go. So, yeah, I mean, balancing it is difficult, but it's just part of the deal. It's a matter of staying organized from there.
No, and I love that, man, because at the end of the day, it's being able to figure out how you can most effectively stay in your lane. And you're doing that by really having clear organization and being focused on exactly what it is that you're best at. And fortunately, in your life partner, your wife, compliments. It sounds like that Daisy really complements a lot of the skill set that you have, as well as the focus areas. So I think that is also another thing that's pretty awesome. So you talked to, like, we're gonna talk to a couple of people that are thinking about, like, how do I get involved in real estate, right? Because we are a lot of busy professionals, especially a lot of people that are in sales, that are in IT sales, that are in pharmaceutical sales, and things like that are watching and listening to us, right? And so there's typically this. You mentioned it, like you had the foresight really early on. I didn't even find out about passive investing until I was already into a number of properties and doing that from here. So it's like it was very eye-opening. So you made a choice early on, right? Because you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, but rather than taking what you read in the book and you buying a property where you lived in California, you were like, I'm going to, save my dreams, my goals, my money, and put it with somebody else. Like, walk us through that, like, active versus passive investing, and why you decided for your case and your context to start with the passive route.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I did end up looking at stuff that was local. I looked in California, right? I was 24 at the time, probably. I was looking in California, and then I was thinking, okay, these numbers don't make sense. So I looked in Arizona. Me and my brother talked about, I have a brother who's 2 years older and who's very like-minded. We're pretty much best friends. And so we had talked about, excuse me, we had talked about potentially moving to a different state as well. Obviously, I did that with my wife, but we talked about that in our early to mid 20s. It was just difficult to end up making sense of something like a fourplex, and I think that was one thing, because if one unit's vacant, then your revenue drops by 25%. That's what I talked about with the scale earlier, right? I think the other piece too, I don't know that I've always been pretty mature. I would say for my age, very long-term focus, but I don't know that I was ready, when I was 25 to really own, operate, and run my own investment, as it were. So, maybe I would have risen to the occasion. But I think at this stage in my life, in the past couple of years, heading into, like, once I hit 30, I just realized I needed to take on more responsibility, and I guess I felt ready, so to speak, in order to be able to move over to the active side. So, with the passive investments, I saw operators who were experienced, who had business plans, who had the strategy laid out, who understood what was going on. I did my own due diligence, of course, pretty extensive due diligence, but that's why I felt more comfortable at that point going and putting my money into another investment rather than running it on my own.
Okay. So which is pretty contrarian, right? Because typically when you're going to invest with someone on your own, and in the real estate specifically, you're talking about the value is typically much higher than if you were to invest in the stock market or something like that, right? Were you investing in the stock market before you got into real estate?
I messed around with like options trading, but besides that, I never did it. And that was my own money. But besides that, I never did a 401k or any retirement plans or anything like that from an employer.
Okay. So I love that mindset, right? Because you were already actively investing. You were just actively investing in options, right? Which is not normally where people start in the paper asset world. And then you went from there to much higher values in terms of being able to place that confidence in other people. And just so people understand, right? And I don't know if this is your case or not, but I mean, if you're gonna trade options, you can do something and you can do a couple $100. It's not that big of a deal. But typically, if you're going to be a part of a private placement, meaning placing your capital with someone else, you're looking at minimum $50,000. Typically, it can be minimum 100 or 200,000. And so that would scare a lot of people, right? Just to think,
right,
go these large multiples. I don't know if that's your case or not, but that's just typical. I'm just saying typically is what it is. So maybe talk us through. You talked about due diligence. That was one of the words that came up as well. That you did extensive due diligence is what you mentioned. So talk to that person who's thinking, wow, you know what? I keep listening to this stuff, and Luke's talking to me about like passively investing. He's done some stock stuff, but like I don't really know how to figure out if that's the right team or that's the right opportunity. So maybe dig into a little bit of your due diligence and kind of what you were doing in the beginning and maybe how it's evolved.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, first, I would end up saying that your confidence in something it can a lot of times be directly proportional to your knowledge around it. Right. So I try to de-risk by doing all this due diligence that we ended up talking about. And so that way it gave me more confidence to throw 5 figures rather than $500 into an investment. But we secret shopped the properties. So we flew out and we secret shopped. When I say secret shopped,
help our people that maybe are not US based, help them understand what the secret shopping is. Cause I think this is really cool. Pay attention to that.
Yeah. So we went in, we said, hey, we're looking to move into the area. We just want to, and we went in as literally prospective tenants to the property management and just dropped in and said, we're looking to move to the area. And so we're looking around for apartments. And so we ended up secret shopping the 2 properties actually. So that was big because, I have a sales background. And so I'm like, okay, so how do they interact with the potential residents? What does that look like? I think the customer experience is extremely important. I wanted to be able to see what kind of cars were there. I wanted to see what kind of deferred maintenance, if any, were there. Was the business plan that was on paper, would it be able to really be realized? That was kind of those questions that I was asking. And I just wanted to see the broader area, that the neighborhood that the asset was in as well. So that was part of the due diligence. Did my own underwriting. So I have an engineering background. So they had their underwriting. I stress tested their underwriting as well, which was a good way to understand the math and the mechanics behind everything. Met with the sponsors as well. And, something that I did not do, that I think when people have asked me that I would suggest, is ask for other people who've invested with you. Like if they're a sponsor, they should be able to provide references, right? So ask about that. And then see how past deals have performed as well. I probably would have done more on that side if I were to go into an investment again as a passive.
Okay, so that sounds good. And you mentioned something else. So you want to maybe ask for references and things like that as a passive to find out how the operator or the general partner or the key sponsor, it's all the same stuff, right? Everybody, how they performed in the past. But you talked about something that maybe a lot of people are not familiar with. And that's a stress test. And so, that a lot of that has to come down to something called a sensitivity analysis and stuff like that. But before you do that, you also mentioned deferred maintenance. And I'm going to help to level set for everybody, just in case they're not aware. So basically, you went to the property to see if like things that should have been fixed a long time ago are kind of just hanging on by their last thread, like they should be fixed, but not, because that's really helping to increase the value potentially of the property by not having so much expense and driving up the net operating income. So I just wanted to clarify for some of our family who don't know that term yet, but go into the stress test. Help us understand more about that, Luke.
So that was basically looking at if occupancy dropped or if revenue dropped for whatever, or I guess a better way to put it is if NOI dropped, where would the cash flow end up? Because for me, it wasn't, I want to make a return. Don't get me wrong. I love cash flow. That's what I really invest for, Billy. But I also wanted to make sure I didn't lose money. I ascribe to Warren Buffett's, 2 rules about money.
I was just thinking, rule number 1. Please tell everybody in case they don't know about rule number 1 and rule number 2, please.
Yeah. So rule number 1 is don't lose money. And rule number 2 is refer to rule number 1. So, I worked so hard to be able to invest this money, and I wanted to make sure that money wasn't going to be lost because I had all this time and energy that had taken me to save this up. And then also it was after tax money. So there's this equity there. I want to make sure it doesn't get diluted or it isn't destroyed, right? So I wanted to stress test it in that way. So ultimately, what I was doing back then was really looking at, well, what's the economic occupancy to where it breaks even? And, those numbers were down in the 70s. I mean, some people, they underwrite to the 60s, 60 percentage points. So that gave me a lot of confidence, especially because the occupancy that it would have to drop to for a physical occupancy hadn't been seen ever in the MSA, right? It would have to be double what it would have been. So I figured, hey, if the occupancy drops to that much, there's probably bigger problems than me worrying about losing that amount of money.
Yeah, I love that. And Luke, I love the fact that you helped us to understand those 2 concepts, right? There's the physical occupancy, meaning is somebody actually in the unit? And then there's the other part, which is the economic occupancy, which is what we really care about, is not only is someone in the unit, are they actually paying the rent? Because if they're just there and they're not paying the rent, as an owner of the property, that's, you've got to take that into consideration when you're looking whether or not, how bad can things go, to your point, which is part of your due diligence, which is part of your stress test and sensitivity analysis, which makes you feel comfortable to say, okay, look, I'm going to put my capital here and expect it to do what it's supposed to do best. So you talked about that you really like the cash flow thing, right? And so most of us know when we're talking about real assets and specifically real estate, you've got your appreciation, you have your tax benefits and depreciation, you have some amortization or equity buildup, and you've got your cash flow. Like, how did you get to the point that you knew what you wanted from real estate was primarily the cash flow? Doesn't mean you don't want the other thing, but what was it about cash flow that was like, this is really what I'm focused on primarily?
So I think I'm more of I have a more of a conservative personality, I would say. And so I'm not as much focused on appreciation, which can be speculative in some ways. And so that was one thing, Billy. I mean, the other part too was I'm also always looking to be able to have long-term wealth. And for me, I end up thinking about, okay, so if there's cash flow coming in, then that just provides more options and you're not waiting, so to speak, every 2 years for a bit or 5 years or whatever the time frame would be for a big payday, right? So I like the consistent, steady drip. I just think that I think in order to have that sort of situation occur, you do have to have a lot of confidence in what you're investing in, and I think the operators have to be solid. That's just what works for me. Different people have different investing philosophies, and that's great, right? But that's kind of why the cash flow was important for me, because I want to replace my income and then be able to have more income on top of that, of course, that is consistent, that's there.
Okay, awesome. And so appreciate that. So you're looking to ultimately be able to replace your income, and maybe I'll take it just another level, but replace your W-2 income, right? So replace that earned income with your passive income is fantastic. And help us understand, like, because this is one of the things that happens to me. And by the way, when you mentioned earlier that you looked in California and you weren't able to get in California, the same thing happened to me, man. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and I was running around Barcelona like, I've got to do this. And I was like, the numbers just don't work. The numbers are not the same. But anyway, I don't want to digress too much. So you mentioned earlier the concept of replacing your income. And I'm just curious, like the investments that you're making now in passively, as well as looking to go more active or being more active, right? How does that stream of income help you or not when you're going into your day job? Because you, very much like me, continue to go into a day job, right? And so I'm just curious what that passive income, how that affects your, maybe the mental space when you go into your day job.
Yeah, I think it gives me more confidence, number one, I would say, because that's, money is a tool. It allows you options, and that's really what it does. So that way you can have more confidence in what you're doing for your day job. So that way, if for whatever reason you're not working there anymore, you do have you do have some runway, right? Because all that money that you're getting passively, you should be collecting it, you should be saving it, you shouldn't be, wasting it, right? On consumables and expendables. At least that's my philosophy. I shove it away, So I think that provides more confidence ultimately, because you have this piggy bank that's building up, and then if things happen, whatever they may be, then you're able to weather the storm, so to speak. And I think it just provides more confidence ultimately, going into a day job, into a W-2.
Yeah, it's amazing how that happens, right? Because I think a lot of times people are concerned that there's this distraction if you're doing things outside of your normal role. But what it actually can do when you're performing well and your passive income is performing well, it actually allows you to be even more laser focused. And I love the word that you just used, which is confidence. Not just one time, but you used it over and over and over. And that's, that can be a really great thing for your employer during the day. So, I think it's a win-win. You do that rather than watching a bunch of Netflix. So, that's cool. I do want to just ask you about because a lot of people are thinking, wow, you talked about at the very beginning that you and your wife, you were able to have a good time yesterday. You had some downtime, and at the same time, your wife is your business partner, right? And so help us understand kind of what is that dynamic like in terms of being able to, kind of switch, and now is work time versus now is us time. So talk to us what's like working with your spouse.
Yeah, I would say that it starts with a pretty solid foundation. We've been together almost 7 years now, coming up on 7 years, and have been married for. Thank you, appreciate it. We've only been married for a few months. We got married in October, so and now it's maybe 6 months. But
double congratulations.
There you go. It starts with a solid foundation. I'd say we communicate a lot. And we work to have open and honest communication. So that's a big piece of it, and early on in our relationship, we ended up doing a couple of different, it wasn't like planned, but it was just the way that naturally progressed of doing some different personality tests. Like there's the love languages and there's the Myers-Briggs, and just kind of understanding like who the other person is. And this was like our second date, like that we were talking about this stuff. So it gave us an understanding of who the other person is. And I think as things have evolved, it's a matter of just continuing that open line of communication. So that's huge in terms of being able to separate the two. It's very difficult. I'd say there's pretty much no separation, except for, I don't know, like in the mornings or in the evenings, I make a concerted, like the last half hour, right? I make a concerted effort not to talk about real estate or not to talk about Make It Rain, because there are other things in life that are going on, of course. We do make sure to have date night. So that's like a weekly thing that we end up it's happening tonight. So we keep that on the calendar as well. We talk about our weeks at the beginning of the week too. So it's Make It Rain. It's what our individual finances are like and what they are collectively. How can we support each other throughout the week? What exercises are we planning on doing, like physical exercise, right? And what's that big thing that we have throughout the week that the other one can support the other one with? And so we do that each Sunday. And so I guess it's a lot of, I don't know, I keep going back to communication. It's a lot of communication and then working to understand where the other person's coming from and working through these little things as they come up, because we're figuring it out along the way as well. It's like we haven't completely built the business that we want to have. And so it's a matter of doing that together and being respectful of each other's opinions and giving each other space as well if it is needed.
No, I love that, man. So being able to understand one another, and it sounds like, the two of you did a lot of the work up front, right? Really sitting down, because there aren't that many couples that will, go through like the Myers-Briggs and really understand kind of what are some of the different behavioral aspects of one another and be comfortable to talk about that. So when you're doing that work up front, I'm sure that you're really starting to see, or you're continuing to see the payoffs just in terms of the ease of communication. And I'm sure it's not easy every single day, but that those lines of communication are really open so that the two of you collectively, individually and collectively, can continue to move towards your individual and couple goals, which I think is
for sure.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. So I guess, Luke, before we kind of get to the going long final three, because eventually, we have to get to the going long final three. If not, we're just going to be talking forever. I guess I would love for you to help us understand kind of Luke, you are where you are right now. Kind of where are things going with you with Make It Rain, and help us understand what does the future look like, man?
Yeah. So, I mean, the big thing for us is so Make It Rain exists for two reasons, right? One is that we want to be able to grow our wealth individually and for our communities and for our family and our friends, right? That's a big part of it. It is financial. But then the other part of it too is being able to increase access and education for millennials around multifamily real estate investing. And so those two things are really why Make It Rain exists and why we continue to work on it day after day. And so that's where we're laser focused on. We end up having investor calls all the time, and even if people aren't interested in investing in multifamily real estate, it's like that's fine. We're here. We're working to provide a resource for people, and if we're saying, oh, you have to like do this with us and blah blah blah, it's like it's not going to be a good fit for everybody, right? So we just try to make sure that we're educating, pushing people or pointing people into resources that they need that would end up being helpful. And in terms of us, long term, and we want to have a sizable portfolio, be able to help our future children, Lord willing, with anything that they end up needing, and provide a good example for them, and be able to really make an impact. I'm sure you're a host, right? You end up hearing very heartfelt things from people when they reach out, right? Or seeing reviews or whatever the case may be. And we see it as a responsibility to make sure that we're continuing to make an impact in what we are doing, because it literally is changing lives, at the end of the day.
I love that, man. So you continue to work on how you can impact others' lives as you move forward, how you can be that positive influence, and also be able to raise continued profile in a positive way. So I think those are things that are fantastic, man. And I'm sure that you're going to get to those goals very, very soon, probably even faster than you think, because of the way that you're focused and organized and putting in the work. So, Luc,
appreciate it,
man. You know what? We got to get to the going long final three. And the thing is, I never asked the going long final three unless you tell me that you're ready for me to ask you. So I guess the first of the first going long final three before is, are you ready?
Estoy listo.
Perfecto. Vamos. I told him we were going to do some Spanish, but he pulled it out on me, man. I like that. So here's the first one, Luc. Very first question is, we started with you coming from California, living in Austin, Texas now. And so we started over there. So I want to bring it back this way, over here to Europe on this side of the pond. So help the Going Long family understand, what is your favorite European city, either that you visited or still on your bucket list to visit?
Yeah, so it's not exactly a city; it's more of a region. So it'd be the Basque region in northern Spain, and the reason is because my grandfather, he was Basque, and he ended up coming here from Spain way back when. So that would be it for me. I speak highly conversational Spanish, but yeah, it would be great to end up going there at some point in my life.
Okay, fantastic. Y hablas muy bien, eh? Por cierto, hablas muy bien. Eres muy humilde. He speaks very well, and he's humble. So that's all good. And yeah, the Basque region is wonderful. Been there with my family, my wife and boys, and it's just an amazing place. Amazing place. So the other thing is, Luc, you have, we're very fortunate because we get a chance to speak to successful people like yourself all the time. And like the thing that everyone that's successful has in common is like only made one mistake in their entire career. I keep getting that wrong. So yeah, probably make lots and lots of mistakes constantly, right? And so the thing is, I would love for you to share with the Going Long family, if you can think of like one mistake or learning experience, however you want to call it, like most importantly, what lesson did you take away from that experience that you could share on with the Going Long family?
Yeah. I can end up thinking of one that happened just last week. It would be from an underwriting perspective, right? Just looking at a deal that we were thinking would end up making sense, but there's just some little, we assumed certain things and should have gone the other way, right? So I think that's a learning lesson, because we need to end up pulling back a bit, right? It's good that we are being aggressive, but we also want to be, it's a balance. We want to be conservative as well. So that's something that just happened last week where we were looking at a deal. So that's a lesson learned for sure, and that's just, at the end of the day, that's just part of growth, right? If you're not if you're not making those mistakes and learning from them, then you're not really growing at the end of the day.
That's it, man. So keep things in the right perspective and continue to push the boundaries and continue to grow. So listen, we're at the last question, the third question of the Going Long Final Three, which is always want to be able to fill the mind, help to educate the mind. And I know that's something that you're big into. So help us understand, what book would you recommend to the Going Long family?
Yeah. So there's a book, I think it's like the seminal book for all success, in my opinion. It's Think and Grow Rich. And there is a workbook that is associated with it as well. And it really breaks down all of the parts and pieces of the book into like these actionable steps in order to fill them out. It's literally a workbook. So I think that's huge. And it's something that's definitely made an impact for me. And I just go back and revisit it on a periodic basis and go through the exercises.
All right. Fantastic. So the workbook from Think and Grow Rich. And I've got another one from Mr. Hill. So that is fantastic.
Yeah.
And you know what, Luc, Mr. D'Abreau, I am just thinking about our great conversation and you talking about starting from California, son of a father who's come over, who went to the States from Trinidad. So you got a chance to see a lot of the work ethic, because he was an entrepreneur and I was in the military as well. So he had wore a number of different hats. So you got a chance to see that early on. You were very clear on what you wanted to be able to do. You saw that real estate was able to provide you with a more scale, an ability to have more scale, be able to give you more control. And so, you continue to focus, communicate with your wife, and talk about the understanding, being able to stay in your lane. And as a result, like you're moving from passive investor who was working a full-time job once again to someone who's still working a full-time job and moving into more and closer into the general partnership and the key sponsor area. And as you have this focus on millennials and you're helping to educate millennials and beyond, like people are watching us, they're listening, and they're going, I got to get in touch with Luc because like so many things vibed with me and I just need to figure out how can I learn more about him, make it rain. And so help us understand, Luc, what is the best way for the Going Long family to reach out to you, to learn more about you and what you're doing over at Make It Rain?
Yeah, the best place really is the website. It's makeitraincapital.com, and we're on Instagram at Make It Rain Podcast. We're on Facebook at Make It Rain. You can also email me, Luc at makeitraincapital.com. I end up responding. I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can reach out to us. We do respond. We actually we set up calls. We chat with people who reach out to us. So yeah, we're definitely here as a resource, and that's the best way to get in contact with me.
Perfect. Make It Rain Capital. We're going to include all that in the show notes as well. And I can attest, I've been over to their website. It's a beautiful website full of information. Going Long family, everybody needs to go over to their website, check it out, and definitely take Luc up on it because he's sincere about it. I reached out to him and look, he and I are here having a conversation. So Luc, I just want to I want to say thank you, man, for investing your time with me, with the entire Going Long family. It's been very, very educational and a worthwhile investment of my time. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, BK. It's been a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to hearing the episode and seeing your continued success as well.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. And just a couple words to the Going Long family. Once again, I want to thank you for investing your time with Luc and I today. Luc has left you so much value sharing his insight. And you know what? You have a unique opportunity today to go out and positively impact 2 or 3 of your friends, right? Share today's episode with them because you're going to get a chance to share something that maybe they really need to hear. And you heard it today. So I'm going to ask you to do that. And when you're doing that, you're also attracting other like-minded individuals. And so I appreciate that about you taking that action, doing that. Also, too, Luc and I would love to know, what'd you think about today's episode? Leave us an honest review because like Luc, I go through every single one of the reviews. I want to understand, what is it that you like? What would you like to hear next? Who would you like to see also too on the show? And so please take the time just to go ahead and leave your honest review. And you know what? I enjoy being able to talk to some of the best experts in the world. And I want you to go out and make it a great day. Until next time. And we will see you very soon. Make it a great day. And thank you. Wow. Don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? When I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me like a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode, so go out and make it a great day.